Hi everybody, how are we? It's another week. I hope you've been well. Consultator here. If it's your first time popping in here, this is Inspire YG, and YG is an acronym for Young Generation. So I pop in here once a week. All these things remaining constant in my life, and I share my journey as an international student. So who am I? I moved to Australia, specifically New South Wales, Sydney, a couple of years ago from Kenya, and I came here as an international student. It's been, whew, we're going to the 10th mark, 10-year mark. I can't believe it. Time just goes so quick, especially when you're having fun and when life gets busy, time just moves, time just flies. So yeah, I pop in here and I share my journey. I say that I'm a very ordinary girl who went through such an extraordinary journey, and it's because I was jumping onto opportunities, jumping onto different ventures, volunteering, meeting new people, and just traveling and doing lots of fun stuff while I was studying full time. So I think I pop in here and that's what I share my journey. And I just realized that I've not been doing a disclaimer to actually say that I'm not an immigration agent. Not that. It's not one of my fortes. It's not that something that I aspire to be or to do. Nothing against people who love it, but I just, that's not what I do by profession. However, I share my journey, and if I feel like I know I have the context or I have the links to connect you to services that might take you or give you more information on your journey, I connect you to those services. So, but yeah, that's the disclaimer. So this is one of the videos that I have really procrastinated doing, just because I feel like, oh my God, it's too much. When I feel like things are too much, I sort of I don't say that I won't get to them. I get to them eventually, but I sort of, waste a lot of time in between. That's procrastination, guys. So, anyway, the video is about how I got my permanent residency. And the reason why I have had a hard time doing this video is because I didn't know how I should approach it, because I didn't want to have to talk about the immigration stuff or have to talk about everything that is on the Department of Home Affairs website, or I just felt like it would be too much, especially when information on those websites change all the time. You blink and they change the government. We have an election and a new government is in place, and those things change. Those rules change. We have a pandemic, those rules go out of the window. So it's one of those things I wouldn't even want to talk about, just because everybody's experience will be so different, because around the time that you're applying for your permanent residency, whatever is happening in Australian environment, especially the political arena, will affect your situation. So it's a case by case situation. So bear with me. I'm just going to share my experience, and that's about that. However, I have done my research and I went on these YouTube streets and I found an amazing gentleman who's actually, I'll link the YouTube channel here. Please go follow him. And he has done a very amazing video, very detailed video on different pathways to permanent residency, including him sharing a little bit of his journey. And I definitely would recommend him. He did an amazing job. So where do I start? I start here. How I actually wrote here, I'm following my notes, and I wrote how I got my permanent residency in Australia. So I started with saying, why are you moving to Australia? Because I wanted to make sure, a couple of videos that I watched trying to figure out what I'm going to say on this video were a couple of people who've had really bad experiences on their journey, which I really felt heartbroken for. I'm very familiar with everything they were talking about, especially talking about being misled by immigration agents, being misled on the courses that they should do, being told that that would automatically lead to a permanent residency and ultimately a citizenship in Australia, and figuring out that that's not the case when they've probably done a 4-year or a 3-year degree. It's really heartbreaking, because I just know that it's heartbreaking. So a couple of videos that I watched and I felt, wow, I yeah, it's some people have really gone through a lot of things and a lot of heartache and hardships trying to get to this pursuit of permanent residency. I'm gonna be very, very clear, very, very honest in this video. It's probably one of the videos that I have really struggled to sit down and do research for and know what to say. But when I'm talking about, if I'm just going to talk about my journey, that will be easier because I have that lived experience. So when I came to Australia a couple of years ago, 2013, I never knew permanent residency was a thing. And I just came because I wanted to expand my horizon and I wanted to do my degree here and I wanted to study with the hope of going back to Kenya and probably getting a better job. I give a story of how I used to look at newspapers in Kenya, and I would look at, there was a column, there was a section in the middle that had like it's almost like a separate set of the same newspaper, but like a separate set, which looked like a magazine, and it was called Lifestyle. That was my favorite part of the newspaper, and at the back, which is weird, I used to read the Eulogies. Got no idea why I had an interest. What are they called? Obituaries, not eulogies, obituaries. Don't ask me why I used to read that, but I used to have an interest in looking at what have people who've passed on, what have been their experiences. It's crazy, but yes. And I would see majority of these people, so they've traveled, they've gone abroad, they've had a lot of experiences, they worked in different companies across the world. I mean, around the world, and I would be like, that's quite fascinating. Then I would read the lifestyle page magazine that was mainly, celebrities or media personalities or politicians, just people who were doing something in the public eye. Most of them who had like humongous jobs had left Kenya, gotten a bit of work experience or studies, and came back and sort of got promotion or got better jobs. So I had this mindset that leaving Kenya and going back with the experiences I would get in Australia might get me the job that I wanted. And that was the only thing that I had in my mind. I didn't even know there was a possibility. And funny enough, by the time I was coming to Australia, Kenya had already done a referendum, so they had updated their constitution, the constitution, and the law about dual citizenship had already taken effect. So it wasn't even, I don't know why I had not even thought about that, and I'm glad I had not. Why am I saying this? Because some of the videos that I was watching today, it was a bit sad because it was people talking about how they had the dream of coming here and moving here permanently, only for their dreams to be shattered. So I would say that I didn't know about PR, and I'm happy that I didn't, because then that helped me to focus on the course that I wanted to do, know my passions, which is what probably I would recommend. Don't do a course just because people are saying that's the course that will give you permanent residency, because that's not how it works in Australia. Whatever is marketable today might not be marketable next 3 months, might not marketable when we have a new pandemic. So I feel like I was much better doing a course that I'm passionate about, so that whether I choose to stay in Australia, whether I choose to go back to Kenya, whether I choose to go to somewhere in Asia, somewhere in America, I will be having experience on something that I have a passion in. So I decided to do social work, and I've done a lot of, please go back to if this is your first time on this channel, I would encourage you to go back to my other videos that I've done, because there are a couple of videos that I've done, and talks about the courses I've done, how I changed my course, and all that information will be relevant to this video. So sidebar, back to the video. So I did social work, and I have done a video on that, so please watch that, because it will give you more context on what I'm saying. And so, having done social work and having stayed only in New South Wales and only in Sydney, the only option I had at the time was to apply for a skill, was to look for social work in the skilled occupation list. So skilled occupation list is one of the things that are there, that it's so the courses that are marketable in Australia at a given time are normally on that skilled occupation list. It's called SOL list. So if you have done social work or have done nursing and you want to apply for, let's say, skilled visa 190, the first thing to do is obviously to check whether the occupation is on the list, because if it's not on the list, you cannot be able to apply. The other thing is they do have minimum points, and it's a point system. So skilled visas are normally point system. I have done another video and I will link what point system means here, at least a little bit of some images here talking about what point systems are. And also you obviously need English requirements, and you get points for doing the English language exam. So now I identified the visa that I wanted to apply, and I identified New South Wales 190 visa. And then I went online. There's also something called point calculator. I will link on the description box of this video what a point calculator is. You can actually calculate the points for yourself. And when I calculated my points, I found out that I had 80 points. Now you might ask, what are these points and how did I get the 8 points? So I'll take you through. I'll put put on the, not on the description box, here on the screen. I'll show you how I got the points I got. So I got points for age. I got points for studying in Australia, for doing a bachelor's degree. Got points for NATI exam, which is an exam, interpreting exam that I have done a video of in the past. I'll put a link or at least a screenshot here. You can watch it later. NATI CCL exam gives you 5 points, and I did PT, which is a English language exam, that gave me some points as well. I got points also as a single person. You get 10 points, and I got what else gave me points? And obviously I got points after being nominated, but I'll talk more on that. So now, after I did that, I submitted my expression of interest. It's called an EOI. You submit that on on a website called Skill Select. It's online. I'll have a link there as well in the description box. You see how Skill Select looks, but you definitely have to sign in to be able to see how it looks like. But basically, when you submit your expression of interest, then you sort of go to something like a pool for everybody who's applied for the permanent residency, permanent visa. So, but then after I did all that, guess what happened? The pandemic came knocking. So the pandemic was already there, but I think in Australia, 2020 towards the end is when a lot of people started feeling the effect of it, especially people in the international student world. That's when we started feeling the effect of it. So what happened to me when the pandemic happened towards the mid 2020 was I had just gotten a new job at the beginning of the year, so March 2020, a job that I loved and I was loving. Now, I worked there, and at the time I was on a visa called 485, which is a graduate visa. It's a visa you are granted after you finish studying in Australia, sort of to give you a chance to get some work experience within the area that you studied, hopefully. It doesn't always work like that, and I'll do another video and talk about my experience with 485, but it's a visa that helps you to gain some type of work experience and exposure after you finish your studies. So my course, I had done social work. It was on the skilled visa. It was on the skilled occupation list, the SOL list, and it was removed. During the pandemic, Australia went through a lot. There was just a lot happening on personal level, individual levels, but also the whole country. Obviously it was a global pandemic, but within Australia it was quite different, including border closures, interstate border closures, international border closures. It was just mess everywhere. And so a lot of people had already left the country and they couldn't come back. So there were shortages of skills, especially within the health industry, and especially nurses who are most needed at the time, nurses and engineers. And I think some different spheres of ICT, because everything now went online. So courses like social work and welfare worker, which is basically my field, I don't know why at that moment they were not regarded as quite important, and so they were removed from the list. Obviously they were brought back quick, because what happened was we started seeing the need for that cohort, because then the conversation after the pandemic kept going. The conversation about mental health and the conversation about people's well-being started now happening. That conversation started happening, and these courses were brought back to the list. However, by the time the course was brought back to the list, my 485 visa was about to expire. Talk about mess. So I'm in Australia. I'm here legally on a graduate visa that is about to expire. That means I will not be eligible to do the job that I'm doing, and I'm not going to be eligible to be in the country, and I cannot leave the country because the borders are shut. So I was in a mess, and I went to my manager and I told my manager, look, this is my situation. That is also another thing I wanted to share, that it helps to be honest. It helps to have someone you can trust in your place of work, because then you can speak the things that you're going through, whether there's a pandemic or not. Excuse the train, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening today out there, but it's so noisy. So I had a very open and honest conversation with my manager at the time, and I told her my predicament and my situation, and I said, look, this is what's happening. There's this visa that I know, as I'm still learning on my role, I wanted to request that if the organization can sponsor me for a 407 visa, which is a training visa. Now, this is another visa that I've been procrastinating to talk about because I really haven't had anybody who has had substantial experience or like lived experience with it. But I will put a link on the description box that can take you to the immigration website. To the government website that can show you what the 407 visa is all about, its conditions and what it entails. But that's the visa that got me staying in Australia after my 485 visa expired. So I have to admit that I was blessed enough to be sponsored by my previous employer under the visa 407, and I stayed for almost 8 months to 9 months on bridging visa, waiting for a response after I was sponsored. So that meant I couldn't leave Australia. Well, I couldn't even leave because the borders were still shut. So, but that's the visa that allowed me to still stay in Sydney, as I waited and as I hoped that social work or welfare work would go back on the skill list, and also as I waited to be granted the training visa so that I could start training, which was a process that my manager was so happy. She had even set it up for me to go through that training and literally make good use of that visa. So now what happened was, so there's something called invitation rounds, which are conducted by the government, by the federal government throughout the year. And what that means is, every couple of months, the state invites you. If you're applying through the state, if it's a 190, it will be a state nominated visa. If it's the 189, it will be a federal visa, nominated visa. So this, like I said, I'm only going to speak about the 190, which is the experience that I've got. And so luckily enough, or like I said, I felt like I was blessed enough. The social work and welfare work worker occupations were added back to the occupation list, and that's how I was able to apply. No, so they were added to the list, but my expression of interest was still on Skill Select. And so what I did within this period when my occupation was out of the list, I worked on all the documents that I needed because I was still hopeful that they are going to need me. I was like, I've done a course that is very valuable and I love it and I'm very passionate about it. And I love Australia and I want to be able to practice what I studied here. So I was optimistic. Anyway, so I did apply. So I received an invitation to apply for PR as a welfare welfare officer with my social work qualification. I've done another visa of why I never got accreditation, social work accreditation, but I got accreditation through the Community Welfare Association. So that's a whole other video. This is the link. This is the screenshot. Please watch that video for more information on how I got my skill assessment. So I got nominated. So I received the nomination from New South Wales. So it's called New South Wales nomination. New South Wales State nominates you. And when it nominates you, it gives you 5 extra points. You remember the points I was talking about? It gives you 5. So I got 5 extra points, and that was a plus. So the nomination is normally valid for 60 days from the date when the Department of Home Affairs invites you. You get 5 points. It expires exactly after 60 days. If you do not launch the visa, that opportunity goes out the window. Then New South Wales nomination also does not guarantee a successful visa outcome, because remember, New South Wales State is nominating you, but Department of Home Affairs is granting you the visa. Those are two different departments not working together. So they do not even want to take accountability. So if they nominate you and the Department of Home Affairs doesn't grant you the visa, they do not want you to go back to the state and say, you nominated me, but I didn't get the visa. They don't want to take any accountability. That's on them. That's information they give you so that you're privy of. Now, I gathered all the documents. The next step I did was to gather all the documents that I needed, and I'll put a screenshot here of all the documents that I gathered. Actually, I quickly want to take you through some of the documents that I gathered because I think this is important. Guys, I'm really sorry that I feel like today is so noisy outside. I don't know. I hope that you can hear it through my microphone. I hope it's bearable. I'm sorry. So basically, I want to take you through. Oh, I know I'm shaking. Let me just grab my laptop because I think I'm shaking the table. So I'll take you through some of the documents that I put together because I needed them to apply these, to put in my skilled migration visa. So I needed to prove that I've actually studied in Australia. Today there's so much disruption. I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna soldier on. So, like I said, I needed to provide extra documentation, and because I had already applied for the 407 visa and I was waiting for response, I needed to do some medical assessment for that, and so that medical assessment that I had done was still valid because it was within 1 year period, and so it was still within the 1 year bracket, so I didn't have to do another chest x-ray, and I didn't have to do another general assessment, but I needed to do a HIV test. So I also needed to do or show proof of polio booster. Now, because why? Because I come from Kenya and they still have traces of polio in Kenya. Something I didn't even know, and I'm a Kenyan. So that is something to consider. I'm not sure if it's across the board. I have never had anybody else say they were asked to prove of polio vaccination, but I literally had to ask my mom to send me my polio certificate from Kenya, something I had not seen, and then got a booster here in Sydney. So I attached all that information and I sent it over to them. So what else did I do next? After that, I actually I did receive my permanent residency. It didn't take long, like I said, because whenever they asked me for documents, it took me, I'm talking about like hours. I'm not talking about days, hours to provide that information. I wasn't even playing around. I was like, I need to give you what you need. Get it and done with. So I definitely will link up this gentleman video. He did a very detailed video on different, because there are different streams, there are different ways of applying for permanent residency. You could apply through skilled visa, which is what I did. That's normally statewide. 190, you are nominated by a state. There's also the family stream. Somebody within a family can sponsor you, or an employer can sponsor you. So there are different types of visas, and I'm not going to do those because, like I said, I don't really want to get into the legalities of stuff, and I'm not an immigration agent, and I think there are people out there who are qualified for this information. And I still think it's good if I apply for my own permanent residency. And I think unless your visa is so complex, your visa application is so complex, you can, you can do this by yourself by going to the Department of Home Affairs website and looking at what they require and provide that information. So I had some disclaimers here that I wanted to say because I had gone through a couple of interesting things. Now, between the time that you submit your expression of interest and the time that you're being invited, so many things that can take place there. And like I said, for myself, it was obviously the pandemic that took place, and then my course, my occupation being removed from the list, and so I couldn't apply. There's so many things that can happen within that window. Another thing that happened, because you're talking about point system, the age. I'll put a link here of the points you get with age. When I first put in this application, I was 32. It took almost a whole year and a couple change before I got invited. So I turned 33 and I lost 5 points. So I had 80 points, but when I turned 33, so on my birthday, I received on my 33rd birthday, which is supposed to be a significant year. I have literally done a video on why 33 is a significant birthday. I'll put a link here. I got that inspiration from Guru. Immigration, Department of Home Affairs or Skill Select, someone was a culprit. I got up in the morning, the first thing I received was an email saying that I've lost 5 points. So that was really sad. And that can happen. And I knew that there was potential of that happening. However, I was still having 10 points more of what was required of me, because at the time, social work and welfare workers needed 65 points to be eligible, and I was already at 80. So when I lost 5, I had 75. So I had already 10 point over, and I think that helped. So I think there's value in being able to do professional year if your course allows you to do that. Social workers cannot do professional year, but if you've done, I think it's IT and some other professionals, they can actually do professional year, which can give you points. If you're able to do, if you're able to study and do PTE exam, the PTE, like I said, I've done a video on PTE and IELTS, the difference between the two and my experience doing the both exams. I still recommend, I would still say PTE is a bit easier. I know it's subjective, but it's a bit easier to me. And you're capable of getting the 20 points. There will be added points for you towards your visa, as well as the NATI exam, the translation exam, if your language is on that as well. That will give you an extra 5 points. So in a nutshell, that was my experience. And I think maybe in conclusion, my experience has been experience of other people that I have talked to, my friends or people that I have seen online when I was researching this video. I would recommend, or I really would encourage, if you're a new person planning or thinking of coming to Australia, I hope this video was helpful, and if you're on this journey, stay inspired, have a plan of where you're going, and stay positive. I believe that whatever is meant for you is meant for you. It doesn't matter how long it takes to get to you. So I hope that you have a blessed week. And anybody, if you meet anybody who is on the same journey as what I have talked about, please share this video with them. If this video resonates with you, or the content that I share on this video or other videos resonate with you, please consider subscribing, sharing that notification, not sharing the video. Obviously, comment down below. Let me know what you think, or let me know how your experience has been. And until the next one, God bless you. Bye.